it's worth knowing that just within the past 5-7 years, computer science and engineering has become the runaway largest major at the university for undergraduates, and more or less, the university is in danger of being transformed into a place like MIT or Caltech rather than a traditional sort of liberal arts institution, which it has always strived to be. And that's partly due to the innovation that the computer science department has had in staging really engaging introductory courses and allowing people, no matter what their background level of coding skills, into the major, so they deserve all the credit for that. But it's also, of course, due to these outside economic forces in the sense in which all you have to do as a freshman at the university is hop on the computer science conveyor belt. You get deposited as a senior into a Silicon Valley startup company. And the students talk about this in the following language, that in their 20s, what you're trying to do is purchase 5 lottery tickets where you try to join startup companies serially for 2 years. Chances are none of them will succeed. But if one of them does, you're made for life, and you're no worse off at the age of 30, having had 2 years of experience in 5 different companies. In fact, you had a great work environment. It's a badge of honor to have participated in something that flopped in Silicon Valley, and you're gaining skills working with interesting people. So I often think about the ethical or moral reckoning that needs to take place on the campus culture as well, to think about what it means to enter into university experience with this as your expectation at the end. And just as you were saying, Anil, that there's some modest good news to point to, there are some new student groups that are on campus these days pointing to the need for conversation about the moral dimensions of technology or the ethical responsibility of people who code. And the students are clever. They've got a big thing going called Practice Safe CS. And it's really important that algorithms not be seen as just something that is a kind of neutral thing in the background, that there are values inscribed into algorithms, and you have to do that well. There's a group called Ethics, lowercase ETHI, capital CS, and they're sort of way ahead, it seems to me, of the faculty. And I don't mean the computer science and engineering faculty, I mean faculty across the university, in trying to push the university to think much more long run about the moral dimensions that the students think much more keenly than the faculty happens to at the moment.
And this is something we were talking about briefly before, but Stanford has always, I think, been the example of this. Is until recently, there was essentially no formal ethics curriculum as part of the computer science program there. And you contrast to, if you go to journalism school, business school, medical school, there's maybe you roll your eyes your way through it, and it's a couple credits you got to do. But you have to have at least the plausible deniability of I've entertained the idea of how ethics impacts the field that I'm in. And then once you get out and you work in the industry, there are professional organizations that will, again, at least nominally review your conduct. And so you can be disbarred if you don't cross the bar. You can lose your medical license if you transgress in certain ways. And yet you take the computer scientists, like the people who wrote the software at Volkswagen, to fudge the numbers on their compliance with the emissions ratings. And those people didn't lose their coding license because they can't. There's nothing you can do. There's no transgression you can do that keeps you from participating in the industry. And the argument thus far has been we're still a maturing industry. We're very young. We haven't learned these things yet. And I said, well, at the point when you become the wealthiest and most powerful industry in the history of the world, which is like tomorrow, then we should probably step up on these things. And it's striking because you can come at this as an ethicist and talk about these things, but there is not a lot of, within the industry, within people in computer science, people talk to each other as peers and saying, boy, we got to get our ducks in a row on this. They don't feel an urgency yet.